So we are very pleased to welcome to the stage today. We've got Carol Ann Lee, Mandy Morton and Nicola Upson, all crime writers, speaking at Felixstowe Book Festival. So hello ladies.
Hello.
Welcome along. So we've got 3 different crime writers here. We've got Carol Ann, who writes true crime.
Yep.
We've got Nicola, who writes fiction inspired by true crime. And Mandy, who writes about crime fighting cats.
Yes.
Is that pretty fair to say?
I think that's accurate.
Brilliant.
Yeah, accurate so
Okay. So can you all just quickly give us a brief background of what you write and why, really? Carol, can we start with you?
Yeah, I've written books on Myra Hindley and Ruth Ellis and Jeremy Bamber, and I'm about to write about the Yorkshire Ripper case, but not about him, about the victims and survivors. So I originally started writing about the Holocaust and Anne Frank, and from that, very roundabout, came through to true crime.
Oh my goodness, that's quite intense, isn't it?
Yeah,
You've not chosen light cases to look
Not
at, have
really,
you? They're quite
no.
dark and, well, they're
Yeah.
obviously all going to be dark, but they're really full on kind of
Yeah.
publicly known cases, names that you mentioned that we will recognise.
Yeah, they are, but I wouldn't write a book unless I felt I had something new to say. So yeah, I want to be able to bring something new.
In terms of researching, listening to your talk just now, you've had access to a lot of the people who've been involved in the cases
Yeah.
that you've written about. How difficult did you find getting those people to talk to you? Or did you feel that you needed some kind of validity in terms of having been published and say, well, you know, I've now published this first book about, and therefore I have some sort of weight behind my career as a writer?
So, but actually I think it's more about how you approach people.
Okay.
Really, the fact that they feel that you're approaching it from the right perspective, even though you want to tell the story sort of very fairly and to give everybody a voice, which is what I try to do with the Hindley book especially. When I've spoken to victims' families, they were all glad to think that somebody was writing about the case and they were going to have a chance to speak, and that they could check the facts before the book was published, because I always let the victims' families read the books beforehand so that nothing comes as a surprise to them.
Did you already have a publishing deal lined up so that you could say, well, this is definitely going to be published, or were you sort of saying, I'm writing this, can you help me, and hopefully we will get
It all happened really
yeah.
quickly with the Hindley book. I've been living in Amsterdam for 6 years, and then I came back here and I started writing the Hindley book, and within the space of weeks I put together an outline, and my agent sent it to a couple of publishers, and a publisher called Mainstream in Scotland picked it up. So I'd already got that, and I always like to do what I call my ground research first, which is reading everything that's already been published about the case before I go to interview people who have been involved.
So you already sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be really rude to go to someone who's been through such a trauma and say, so tell me who you are. Kind of thing.
I've been through this 1,000 times.
Yeah. So, and I think it is your approach to people, you know, and the fact that I'm open with people. If you want to see the book before it's published, you can.
Good.
Have you ever had anyone say, no, I don't want you to publish that, I don't want what you've written, I don't agree, I don't want you to write that?
No, I've never had anything like that. The only thing is, more recently there was a case I wanted to write about, and only one woman survived out of a massacre, and I couldn't track her down. So I would never have continued with it without her permission, because she lost all her family. And it's a very interesting case for many reasons. But and also, you know, you want to speak to the people involved. There's no point in writing a sort of second, I got all this from newspapers, here it all is together.
It's just going to be speculation, isn't it? There's not going to be kind of any solid foundation.
Yeah, so there's no point anyway.
Yeah.
So far I've been lucky.
Excellent. So, Nicola, moving on to you, what kind of things do you write, and where does your inspiration for these things come from?
Right, well, I write a series of books which is set in the 1930s, and the lead character in those books is a lady called Josephine Tay, who lots of crime fiction fans will already be well aware of, because she was a very fine so-called golden age novelist in the sort of from 20s to the early 50s, and she wrote some wonderful books, very, very famous, still in print, books like Daughter of Time, The Franchise Affair, Brat Farah. And the books actually started as my wanting to write a biography about her to celebrate her work, and also to bring to light the career she'd had in London's West End. She was a very famous playwright. John Gielgud starred in and directed some of her plays. But I kept hitting lots of brick walls in terms of the information I could find. And it was Mandy here who uttered the immortal words, "Oh, for God's sake, just make it up." And so that's how the books started. And to this day, they all start with something real about Tay's life and work, whether it be the play that she wrote called Richard of Bordeaux in the West End, or her love of Portmeirion, or her Suffolk ancestry, or a year-long love letter written to her by another actress. They form the basis of the novels, which are then incorporated into a fictional, largely fictional, murder mystery.
Brilliant.
Superb.
That sounds fascinating. That's absolutely amazing. And Mandy, you're so different from these two ladies.
I'm
in
very
what you do.
different. Yes.
Can you tell us what you do?
Not different in respect of the fact that what I wanted to achieve with this series of books was a fully fledged crime novel in each case, something that people could guess at in the style of the sort of the golden age and that sort of thing. The only subtle difference, which some people think is not quite so subtle, is the fact that I haven't got one human being
Brilliant.
in any of the books. It's all about cats. It's a world of cats, and having we adopt elderly cats. And we started to adopt elderly cats after our cat that we'd had for many years, Hetty, died, and we thought, well, we'll start to give a home to cats that maybe not everybody else wants. We had a couple of lovely experiences as far as that's concerned, and I found that I was still grieving for my original cat, Hetty. I'd had a very long career at the BBC, and the first winter after I'd actually left the BBC, I was twiddling my thumbs, and I thought, what am I going to do? And I was still fairly grief-stricken about losing this cat.
Well, obviously.
And I thought, well, what we do is we breathe life back into her.
Brilliant.
And we also breathe life back into the ones that we've lost around us, our friends and everything else. So I formed the No. 2 Feline Detective Agency.
So clever.
And then constructed a series of crimes that these two girl cats, Hetty and Tilly, could get involved in. And
Get
then
their claws into it.
it is full of puns, like
Yes.
I should say.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It is very pun-worthy, as everyone's saying. But it is semi-biographical.
Okay.
And Hetty has had a music career, so have I. Hetty is very bad-tempered in the morning, so am I. And there are other traits which I will not discuss here. And Tilly is very mild-mannered and reminds me of somebody very close to my heart. So essentially, it's not a world that is that difficult to recreate. And what's great about it is that it's set sometime in the 70s. I can't honestly tell you why.
The video recorder has just come in.
The video recorder's just been invented, which is much fun for them to get their heads around, or their paws around. But essentially, I've created a complete town where there are shops. I mean, there is sort of Elsie Haddock's Fish Emporium, where they get their fish and chips from. We've got Larry's van, which delivers wonderful sausage sandwiches. We've got Betty and Beryl Butter, who run a pie and pastry shop. And Hetty and Tilly actually live in the back of the pie and pastry shop, where they have an office which suddenly becomes a bedsitter in the evenings. So they're taking on cases a bit at a time and a little. They've had adventures in Cornwall. They are currently investigating the Michaelmas Murders Adventures, which is set on the town's allotments. That's coming out this autumn. So there's an awful lot of body count going on there. Essentially, it is the most glorious, fun way of spending my winter, because I always write these books in the winter. I'm now on book 5, which is going to be coming out. And essentially, for those people that love cats, I'm hoping they will love these books. And even if you don't like cats, it's a very tongue-in-cheek. But I should warn you that the murders are very dastardly, very cruel, and in many cases very black as far as the humour is concerned. So
Brilliant.
beware.
I think when it comes to murder, though, you have to have a black sense of humour
Of course
to
you do, yes.
to kind of cope with it, don't you? So how much research do you have to kind of put in? Because obviously, Carol Ann, you have to put in a serious amount of research because it's all factual and you've got to interview the people involved and all this kind of stuff. But from the more fictionalised things, how much research do you...
It's important to me. I mean, the book that came out last summer, which is The Death of Downton Tabby, actually,
Lovely.
it's interesting that we're sitting here at the Felixstowe Book Festival because it is set at a literary event, or a literary event in this particular case, where the town is having its first literary festival. Downton Abbey is the star. And along with Downton Abbey, Tilly, who is actually the one that has been actually setting up all the artists and the authors to come, has also been very lucky to engage the Brontes, who are Charlene, Emmeline and Anne.
Those names sound really familiar. I know. I can't put my finger on where I've
So
heard
when
that
you
before.
talk about research, the Bronte, the original Bronte family is very close to my heart. I'm a huge sort of fan of anything to do with the Brontes as far as biography is concerned. I just think they're fascinating, and I don't think any of us would be sitting here today as women if it hadn't have been for those women actually doing all of that. So yes, a lot of their life is woven into that book. I mean, you will hear Emily decrying the moor and saying how she's only safe to be in the moor and she doesn't want to be anywhere else, and so on. So I do actually take people from real life and then put ears and whiskers on them, and then it's just a matter of everybody trying to decide who they are.
You've been mentally putting ears and whiskers on a few people at the festival this year, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I mean,
Do you look at people and think, oh, that person would be a Siamese, or that person would definitely be Tabby?
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, long-haired tabby is my passion. So Hetty and Tilly are both long-haired tabbies,
Right.
which is lovely. So anything short-haired is well up for being the murderer.
Are they the most sinister?
They can be very sinister, particularly in the first book, but I'm not going to tell you why.
Don't, because I'm reading the first book. Really.
There we are. But actually, an awful lot of it is taken from life. So yes, there is a little bit of research involved. Occasionally I have to look up a motorbike or something like that, because Hetty and Tilly have a motorbike and sidecar, which they go around in. Which is their main mode of transport. But yeah, it is such fun, and most of it, sadly, does come out of my head, which does leave an awful lot to be desired in some particular areas. So, you know, you've got to be mad to write them.
And mad to read them?
Totally.
Oh, absolutely. So Mandy has a lot of fun writing her books. That's very obvious. Do you have a lot of fun writing your books, Nicola and Carol?
I'll let you answer that.
Okay, I think it's probably fair to say that there are good days and bad days. There are definitely days when I'd much rather be shopping. But there are days, and there's nothing better than when it's going well. And for me, that usually happens in the latter stages of a book. The first third of a book is always awful. You've got all these new characters to deal with, and it's like walking into a room full of strange people and having to engage with them and get to know who they are. The research part, which we were talking about a few minutes ago, is fantastic because sense of place is really important. So it's great to be able to go to different places you don't know so well, spend time with them and get to know them. That's always a fun part.
Do you have to be very disciplined with yourself to stop researching and actually start
Yes,
writing?
because it's so much easier to read
Yeah.
other people's books.
Yeah.
And I do have to be really disciplined. And it's a nice tandem thing, because you start with a bee in your bonnet about the sort of book that you want to write, and then your research leads you down different avenues that you never expected. Maybe it creates characters that you hadn't intended to put in the first place. So that's always a joy, to find those different paths that you're not expecting at the beginning. But then you're absolutely right, there is a point where you just have to. There are no more excuses. You've just got to get stuck
It's a
in.
great legitimate procrastination, isn't it, research? It's like, well, yeah, but I'm working, I'm researching, but actually, ultimately, you're not
wasting your time.
You can only do
You've
so
got to
much
sit at the
research,
computer.
and you have to actually get the book written. Yeah.
Then there is that word deadline.
Yes, indeed.
And
Yeah.
there's never been a truer word more expressed than deadline, because obviously that's something that we all have to work to, because you've got a publisher on the other end saying, and when am I going to see this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they have to plan ahead as well.
So, do you prefer writing your first draft, or is it a bit of a relief when you get to the end of that and you can start sort of fine-tuning it with the editing process, or is the editing process a bit of a chore and sort of...
It's really perverse for me, because I enjoy doing the first draft, and I write quite slowly, but most of it tends to stay in, so that's good. But there's nothing I enjoy more when it gets to the editing process and the book is finished than cutting out stuff I've spent hours and hours slaving over. I find it really satisfying.
Do you sort of like cut it and paste it into another document just to
I have
keep
done
hold
that,
of
yes, I
that?
have done that. I have cut bits from one book and they have reappeared in another, yeah.
So you've not wasted your time for doing it?
Recycling.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I don't edit anything. It literally, I mean, I have days when I can write the comedy aspect of the books, and I have days when I have to do the murders. That's the only thing that I allow myself, and I know that if it's a day when I've got to achieve a murder and it's not happening, I stop. And there are days when I can be very, very funny, and that's very important to the books. It's absolutely vital that against the blackness of the book, there has to be the comedy. Otherwise, people would be just so miserable about the whole thing. Because people that love cats can't really understand why I can make them so cruel. But if you look at a couple of cats in a fight,
Absolutely.
Jane's
Yeah.
cat.
it's the cruelest thing you have ever seen.
And the noise they make is
Absolutely.
blood-curdling, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what I try and do. I mean, I have to
And
stay
Jane's
fair.
cats do like to murder pigeons and other birds and bring them in and say, look what I've just murdered.
Them all over the floor.
Yeah, so yes,
I
they
have
are.
a cat called Monster, which I think tells you everything you need to know about
Yeah.
her.
Yes.
Leprechauns.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep,
But
she
do you
terrifies
get
me.
down when you write your books?
I don't think I do, but then I usually get down after I've finished a book, believe it or not. I love doing the research. There's not a lot of joy in the subjects I write about, obviously, but I do love research. I love going into archives. I love looking up old newspapers, and when I did the Ruth Ellis book, I went to the National Archives and opened up files that had not been seen before. With the Hindley book, I was the first person to look into her prison files at any length, and that
You
was
read her biography, didn't you?
yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. But doing the research into her prison files was quite strange, because at that point they'd only just been released, and you had to be locked into a little room on your own at the National Archives. And for me, it was a problem because I need the toilet bowl. So I was constantly knocking on. Can I be allowed out, please? But I love doing the research, and I actually love meeting. Although they have to talk about very traumatic times, I love meeting the people who I interview for the book, because I find them all so interesting. And then when it comes to the writing itself, I think I know my subject so well then that I tend to fly through that part of it. It's the research that holds me back, because I just can't let it go.
Yeah. Have you ever been kind of emotionally drained when you've come away from an interview where it's been so horrific that you just think, I can't do anything with it for the moment, because it's got to kind of sink in your head? And
Always. And sometimes when I've written books, I kind of do this weird method writing thing where, for instance, when I was writing the Ruth Ellis book, I found out that she wore Miss Dior perfume, and I bought a bottle of that, and every morning before I started work I'd spritz myself with the perfume, and then I felt like I got to Ruth.
Okay.
So so I didn't do anything too odd with the Hindley book. But I always find some way in, and I always have a playlist for the books that I'm working on.
I've heard that from a lot of writers, actually.
Yeah.
They have a soundtrack for their book.
Yeah.
Or a certain,
That's it. Yeah, it's usually the songs from that era. You do that as well.
Yeah. And for me, it's not necessarily songs from the era, because I think I'd drive myself up the wall if I were listening to 1930s music all the time. But it's songs that kind of reflect the mood of the section that I'm writing about.
Yeah.
One thing I'm going to mention her is that myself and Nicola are both big fans of Kate Bush, and weirdly, she's the only singer I can listen to when I'm actually doing the sort of the creative writing. I can't listen to any other singer at all, but I can still get into it as long as Kate's singing.
do you just get the urge to kind of throw your arms around in a mad
Just even talked about that and nearly treated you to my rendition of Kathy.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling to hold back.
Very grateful to Kate Bush, because London Rain, which is the last book one, I had a deadline from Faber, and Mandy, who is not a particular Kate Bush fan, is interested in her music. I am absolutely mad about Kate Bush, and have been since I was 7 and Wuthering Heights came out. And Mandy, when Kate Bush announced that she was going to do some live dates, Mandy had been onto the Kate Bush website to get T-shirts and things for me as presents. So she had priority booking and I didn't, which was a little annoying. Anyway, so she got the tickets, and she held these tickets over me and said, if you don't finish this book by a certain date, you're not going to sell these tickets. And by that time, they were making about £1,500 each on the internet. And so I sort of believed her. So I did get the book done a month early.
That is a really good tactic.
Yeah.
Superb.
What can I hold over you? Oh, I'm going to think about that. That's a really, really good
I'm
tactic.
still. I've got to do that all over again now. I've got to think about something for
She
the
won't
next
be touring
deadline.
for a while, though.
No, the next book will be done in 35 years. But also, I have to thank her for the title, for London Rain, because it made me smile, because when the book first came out, one of the reviewers said very confidently that the title was taken from a Louis MacNeice poem in 1939, when actually it was taken from a Kate Bush song from 1979. So there we go. Yeah.
Excellent. So what's coming up next for you all?
I've got the Michaelmas Murders coming out at the end of August, which, as I said, is set on the town's allotment, so that's another book. And then Head Goes Down again this winter. We've been celebrating the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band this summer. I can't say much more than that, other than the fact that Hetty and Tilly will be going on a very psychedelic road trip.
Amazing.
With a lot of catnip.
Catnip, yes.
Obviously. So that's what's next in the pipeline.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. Nicola?
Our next book out for me is called 9 Lessons, and it comes out in November. And it's got the slightly weird twin inspiration of the ghost stories of M.R. James, which I absolutely love. Some of it's set here in Felixstowe. And The Cambridge Rapist, a real case again from 1974 to 5, which kind of fascinated me in the way that it had Cambridge absolutely under the grip of fear for a period of 18 months, and what that must have been like for the women who lived there at the time and the police who were trying to work on the case. So
And the students.
yeah. Of course, I had to change that though, because transporting it back to the 1930s, female students.
Female students,
no.
of course.
So I've
yes.
made them sort of they're the shop workers and the factory girls and the head and that sort of thing. So again, it's a community of young women, but not students.
And my book is very much quite similar, actually, because I'm writing about the Yorkshire Ripper victims and survivors, and that same thing about a place being held completely in fear. You know, all the female students and basically all the women of the North in the 1970s were absolutely petrified.
We were, it's interesting because I've spoken to a couple of writers about the Yorkshire Ripper.
Yeah.
And now I can't remember who either of them were. One of them was at
What was his name?
Southwold a couple of weeks ago. He worked on the case, he was a policeman at the time.
Right.
And he said the attitude of the senior police officers was appalling.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
Because they were only prostitutes.
Yeah.
In
And
his
and you know,
words.
and as well, you know, it's talked about as if he only killed prostitutes, or they were mostly prostitutes. But actually, some of the women described as prostitutes were not. Irene Richardson was not a prostitute. She was a woman who had fallen on extremely hard times, and she was sleeping rough in the last few weeks of her life. But there is absolutely no evidence to show that she was working as a prostitute. And you know, I mean, I don't care what the women were in that sense. To me, it doesn't matter.
A person is a person,
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly. But at the same time, you know, they're only described as prostitutes, and they had so much more than that. You know, a lot of them were mothers, and each woman is so different. They're all very different characters, and nobody's really looked at their lives before. And I really wanted to do that.
Which seems extraordinary, considering
It
how many
does.
years on we are
Yeah.
and how high profile that case is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
mad.
it's crazy, isn't it?
Absolutely
Yeah.
mad.
Well, thank you very much, ladies.
Thank
Brilliant.
you. Yes,
Brilliant.
yes.
Thank you
Could
very
talk
much
to you for
time.
absolutely ages. 'Cause
Yes.
just getting into the minds of criminals and crimes and cats is just absolutely, absolutely brilliant. But thank you very much, ladies, and we hope
Thank
you enjoy
you.
the rest of your weekend here at Felixstowe.
We certainly will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.